Clara's hands shook as she stood on that auction block, wrists bound, dress torn, pride shattered. A man shouted, $2 for the widow. Another laughed, she ain't worth one. Then boots thudded across the dirt. A stranger's voice cut through the cruelty. I'll take her, not to own, to set free. She whispered through cracked lips, you'll regret choosing me. He looked straight into her eyes. I already regret waiting this long. If you want to know what happened next, subscribe to Wild West Love Stories and follow Clara's journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Silver Creek, Wyoming territory, summer of 1879. The heat pressed down like a fist. Clara Jane Whitmore felt the rope bite into her wrists, felt the splinters of the wooden crate dig into her bare feet. She had lost her shoes, somewhere between Colorado and here. She had lost everything else long before that. Step up, gentlemen, up. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the square. Got ourselves a widow today, young enough to work, old enough to know her place. Clara did not look at the crowd. She looked past them, past the false front buildings and the dust-choked street toward the mountains she would never reach. She can read and write. The auctioneer continued, slapping his hand against his thigh. Schoolteacher, they say. Fancy that. Who wants a woman who can read? Laughter rippled through the men gathered below. I'll start at $5, someone called. 5, for a widow with no land and no kin. You're generous, Wilkins. 3 then. 2. $2. The auctioneer shook his head. Any man willing to go higher for this fine specimen of, she ain't worth 2. A thick voice cut through. Look at her, skinny as a fence post. Probably can't cook neither. More laughter. Clara's jaw tightened. Her chin stayed high. She had learned this lesson years ago in her father's house, in her husband's house, in every room where men decided her worth. Tears bought nothing but more cruelty. $2 going once. She thought of Daniel, her husband. Dead 6 months now, buried under a Colorado mountain that had swallowed him whole. She thought of Ezra, Daniel's brother, standing over her the day after the funeral. You belong to this family now, Ezra had said. The land, the house, everything Daniel left, it's mine. And so are you. She had run that same night. $2 going twice. 3. A new voice. Clara's eyes snapped to the left. A man stood at the edge of the crowd, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in worn canvas and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. He held the reins of a gray mare in one hand. The other hand rested easy at his side. $3 from the stranger, the auctioneer crowed. Do I hear 4? 4. Wilkins again. 5. The stranger's voice was low, steady, like he was discussing the price of feed. Wilkins hesitated. That's steep for a widow? Then don't bid. Silence fell over the crowd. Clara watched the stranger step forward, boots thudding against the packed earth. He moved like a man who had nothing to prove and nothing to fear. $5, the auctioneer said slowly. Going once, going twice, sold to the man in the brown hat. The stranger reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. He counted the coins without hurry, placed them in the auctioneer's palm, and turned toward the platform. Clara did not move. She did not breathe. He climbed the 3 steps and stood before her. Up close she could see his face now, weathered, lined around the eyes, a jaw that looked carved from the same stone as the mountains. His eyes were gray, quiet, impossible to read. Ma'am, he said. She said nothing. He reached for the rope binding her wrists. She flinched hard, every muscle in her body screaming to run, to fight, to do anything but stand here and let another man decide her fate. He stopped. His hands hovered in the air between them. I ain't gonna hurt you, he said. I'm gonna cut this rope, then you're gonna step off this platform, and then you're gonna decide what happens next. Clara stared at him. What happens next? That's up to you. He pulled a knife from his belt and cut the rope with one clean motion. The frayed ends fell away. Clara's arms dropped to her sides, and she saw the welts where the rope had bitten deep red and raw against her skin. She rubbed her wrists, still did not move. "Why?" she asked. "Why what? Why did you buy me?" The stranger sheathed his knife. "I didn't buy you. I bought your freedom. What you do with it ain't my business." He stepped back, giving her room. Behind him the crowd murmured. Some of the men looked confused. Others looked angry. One of them, a heavy man with tobacco stains on his beard, stepped forward. "Now hold on, Beckett. You can't just buy a woman and set her loose. She's got debts. She owes—" "She don't owe you nothing, Holt." The stranger Beckett turned to face the man. His voice didn't rise, but something in it made Holt stop cold. "Unless you want to explain to Deputy Greer why you're selling women in the town square like cattle." Holt's face reddened. "This ain't illegal. She signed a work contract. She owes—" "Show me the contract." "I don't have to show you nothing." Beckett took one step toward him, just one. "Show me the contract, or walk away." The moment stretched tight as wire. Clara watched from the platform, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had seen men fight before. She had seen Daniel bloody his knuckles on men who cheated him at cards. But this was different. This stranger wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply waiting. Holt spat into the dirt. "This ain't over, Beckett." "It is for today." Holt turned and shoved through the crowd. The other men drifted away, some still muttering, most already losing interest. A woman being sold was nothing new in Silver Creek. A woman being freed that was strange enough to make them uncomfortable. Beckett turned back to Clara. "You can come down now." She climbed off the platform on shaking legs. The ground felt strange beneath her bare feet, solid, real hers. For the first time in weeks, no one was holding her. "You got somewhere to go?" Beckett asked. Clara almost laughed. "No. Family. Dead. Friends. None that would claim me." He nodded once, like this was the answer he expected. "I got a ranch about 3 miles east. Got a spare room. You can stay there tonight, get some food, figure out what you want to do next." Clara's eyes narrowed. "And what do you want in return?" "Nothing." "Every man wants something." Beckett looked at her for a long moment. She expected anger or offense, or that particular kind of frustration men showed when women didn't trust them. Instead, she saw something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I reckon every man you've met has taught you that. But I ain't every man, and I ain't asking for nothing." He turned and walked toward his horse. Clara stood frozen in the middle of the empty square, the sun beating down on her shoulders, the dust settling around her feet. She could run. She could turn and walk the other way and take her chances on the road. She had done it before. She could do it again. But her legs wouldn't move. And somewhere in her chest, buried under years of survival and fear and forced silence, something small and stubborn whispered, "What if he means it, ma'am?" Beckett had stopped a few yards away, the mare's reins loose in his hand. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the road ahead. "You coming or not?" Clara took a breath. Then she walked toward him. The road to Beckett's ranch wound through dry grass and scattered pine. Clara walked beside the mare, too proud to ride, too tired to talk. Beckett led the way in silence, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with every step. After an hour, she finally spoke. "What's your name?" "Samuel Beckett. Most folks call me Sam." "Samuel." She tested the name. It felt solid, plain, nothing fancy or false about it. "I'm Clara. Clara Whitmore." "I know." She stopped walking. "How do you know?" Sam didn't stop. "Holt's been talking about you for 2 weeks. Widow from Colorado, ran from her husband's family, got picked up near the border. Said you owed money for your passage." "I don't owe him anything. He lied." "I know that too." Clara hurried to catch up. "Then why did you wait? Why didn't you—" I wasn't sure you wanted help. She stared at him. I was standing on an auction block. Some folks end up in bad places because they're running from worse ones. Didn't know if you wanted to be found. Clara had no answer for that. Because he was right. Because part of her, the part that had survived Ezra's fists and Ezra's threats and Ezra's cold promise that he would drag her back if she ever ran that part, had wanted to disappear completely. They walked in silence until the ranch came into view. It was modest, a small house with a wraparound porch, a barn twice its size, fenced pastures where a handful of horses grazed in the late afternoon light. Mountains rose blue and distant behind it all. It ain't much, Sam said. It's beautiful. The words came out before she could stop them. He glanced at her, something flickering across his face. Then he looked away. Rooms on the right side of the house. Got a lock on the inside. Basins by the window. I'll bring water. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. He started toward the barn. Door stays closed until you open it. That's a promise. Clara watched him go. His shoulders were broad, his stride unhurried. He didn't look back. She stood on the porch for a long moment, feeling the wood beneath her bare feet, smelling hay and horse and something else. Something that reminded her of mornings before Daniel, before Ezra, before everything broke. The room was small but clean. A narrow bed, a wooden chair, a basin on a table by the window. Faded curtains filtered the last light of day. Clara checked the lock on the door. It was solid. She checked the window latch. It held. She sat on the edge of the bed and pressed her palms against her face. She didn't cry. She had learned long ago that tears solved nothing. But she sat there for a long time, letting the silence settle around her like a blanket. A soft knock came at the door. She tensed, reached for the knife she didn't have. Water's outside the door, Sam's voice said. Left some bread, too. Don't gotta open up if you don't want to. Footsteps retreated down the hall. Clara waited 5 minutes. Then 10. Then she crept to the door, turned the lock slowly, and cracked it open. A bucket of warm water sat on the floor. Beside it, a loaf of fresh bread wrapped in cloth. And next to that, a small bundle of wildflowers tied with twine. She stared at the flowers. Her throat tightened. No one had given her flowers since her mother died. She gathered everything and brought it inside. She washed her face, her arms, her feet. She ate half the bread and saved the rest. She set the flowers in the empty basin where she could see them from the bed. And when darkness finally came, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, asking the same question over and over. Why would a stranger do this? What does he want? She had no answers. But for the first time in months, she slept without one hand on a weapon. Tick. Morning came golden and quiet. Clara woke to the sound of horses and the smell of coffee drifting through the walls. She lay still for a moment, listening, waiting for the fear to come. It didn't. She found a clean dress folded outside her door. It was plain brown cotton, patched at the elbows, but it was whole, and it fit. She changed quickly, braided her hair with trembling fingers, and stepped into the hallway. The kitchen was empty. A pot of coffee sat warm on the stove. Beside it, a plate covered with a cloth napkin. She lifted the cloth and found eggs, biscuits, and a slice of ham. She ate standing up, back against the walleyes on the door. Old habits. Through the window, she saw Sam in the corral working with a young horse. He moved slowly, patiently, letting the animal come to him instead of chasing it. The horse circled, snorted, circled again. Sam waited. Clara finished her breakfast and stepped onto the porch. The morning air was warm, but not yet heavy. She could hear birds somewhere and the distant murmur of a creek. Sam noticed her and tipped his hat but didn't approach. He kept his focus on the horse. Clara walked toward the corral fence and rested her arms on the top rail. That horse don't trust you. Not yet. Sam didn't look up. What are you gonna do? Same thing I've been doing. Wait. Clara watched him work. The horse was young, maybe 2 years old, with a wild look in its eyes that she recognized. She had seen that look in the mirror. "How long you been doing this?" she asked. "Doing what? Training horses? Living out here?" "Since the war ended." "You fought?" Sam was quiet for a moment. The horse took a step toward him, then skittered back. "Yeah, I fought." "Which side?" "The one that kept the country together." He finally looked at her. "Does that matter?" Clara shook her head. "Just asking." "Most folks don't ask." "Most folks don't buy a woman off an auction block and give her flowers." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "That what's bothering you?" "The flowers. I just don't understand why." Sam turned back to the horse. "My mother used to say you can tell what a person values by what they give away. She gave away flowers. Said they don't cost nothing but the time it takes to pick them, and they remind people that beauty still exists." Clara felt something crack inside her chest. A small fissure in the wall she had built so carefully around her heart. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." She was. Past tense. The words hung heavy. Clara didn't push. She understood that kind of silence. They stood together in the morning light, watching the young horse circle and test and retreat. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. And somewhere in that silence, Clara Jane Whitmore felt the first tiny seed of something she had thought was dead forever. Hope. 3 days passed. Clara found her rhythm in the small spaces of Sam's ranch. She cooked breakfast while he tended the horses. She swept the porch while he mended fences. She read the only book he owned, a battered copy of Pilgrim's Progress, while he sat on the porch whittling something from a block of pine. He never asked where she came from, never asked about the bruises fading yellow on her arms, never asked why she flinched at sudden sounds or kept a knife under her pillow. On the 4th morning, Clara found him saddling the gray mare. "Going to town," he said without looking up. "Need supplies. You can come if you want." Clara's stomach tightened. "I don't think that's wise." "Holt won't bother you. Not while you're with me." "It ain't Holt I'm worried about." Sam paused, his hand still on the saddle straps. "Who then?" Clara hesitated. She had told no one. Not the men who captured her near the border. Not the women at the way station. Not anyone. But Sam was looking at her now with those quiet gray eyes, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she wanted him to know. "My husband's brother," she said. "Ezra Holloway. He's been chasing me since I left Colorado." "Why?" "Because my husband's land, the land I was supposed to inherit, has silver on it. A lot of silver. Ezra wanted the land. And when I wouldn't sign it over..." She touched her arm where the deepest bruises had been. "He decided he wanted me too." Sam's jaw tightened, his hands stilled on the leather straps. "He hurt you?" It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And he's coming here." "He won't stop. Not until he finds me." Sam finished tightening the saddle. He turned to face her fully, and for the first time, she saw something dangerous in his eyes. Not toward her, never toward her, but toward something beyond the horizon. "Then we best make sure he regrets the trip." Clara shook her head. "You don't understand. Ezra has money. He has men. He's not gonna ride in alone and..." "Clara." Sam's voice was soft but firm. "I spent 4 years watching men kill each other over things that didn't matter. Land, pride, the color of a uniform. You think I'm scared of one man from Colorado? I think you should be. And I think you've spent too long believing you ain't worth protecting." He held out his hand. "Come to town with me. Walk beside me where everyone can see. Let them know you belong here." Clara looked at his hand. Calloused, scarred, steady. "I don't belong anywhere," she whispered. "Not yet, but you could, if you decided to stay." The words hit her harder than she expected. Stay. Such a simple word. Such an impossible dream. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain, and together they rode toward Silver Creek. The town was busy for a Thursday. Wagons crowded the main street, and the general store hummed with voices. Clara felt eyes on her the moment they crossed the town line. Whispers followed like shadows. "That's her. The widow Beckett bought. Wonder what he paid." Sam didn't react. He walked beside her with that same unhurried stride, like the whole world could burn, and he would still take his time. Inside the general store, a woman behind the counter looked up. She was older, maybe 60, with silver hair pinned tight, and eyes that missed nothing. "Sam Beckett," she said. "Twice in 1 month. Must be my lucky day." "Mrs. Callahan." Sam tipped his hat. "Need some flour, sugar, and whatever coffee you got that ain't 3 months old." Mrs. Callahan's eyes moved to Clara. Something softened in her expression. "You the girl from the auction?" Clara's spine stiffened. "I am." Mrs. Callahan came around the counter. She was shorter than Clara expected, but she moved with the authority of a woman who had survived plenty of her own battles. "You look like you could use a proper meal and a conversation with someone who ain't Sam Beckett." Sam actually smiled. First time Clara had seen it. "She ain't wrong." "I'm fine," Clara said automatically. "Didn't ask if you were fine." Mrs. Callahan took Clara's arm. "I asked if you wanted company. There's a difference." Before Clara could protest, she was being led toward the back of the store through a curtain into a small sitting room that smelled of lavender and old books. "Sit," Mrs. Callahan ordered. "I'll make tea." Clara sat. For the next hour, Martha Callahan talked. She talked about the store, about her husband who died in 71, about the winters that froze the creek, and the summers that baked the earth to dust. She talked about Silver Creek and its people, who to trust, who to avoid, where to find the best eggs and the worst gossip. And slowly, carefully, she asked Clara questions. Not about Ezra, not about the auction, but about small things. What food she liked, what books she'd read, whether she'd ever seen the mountains in autumn. By the time the tea was cold, Clara realized she had spoken more words in 1 hour than she had in the past month combined. "You're welcome here any time," Mrs. Callahan said as she walked Clara back to the front. "My door's always open, and so is my kitchen." Clara's throat tightened. "Why are you being kind to me?" Mrs. Callahan stopped. She looked at Clara with eyes that had seen too much and forgiven even more. "Because someone was kind to me once when I had nothing and no one, and I swore if I ever had the chance I would pass it on." She squeezed Clara's hand. "That's how it works, child. Kindness begets kindness. All you have to do is receive it." Clara walked out of the store with something new growing in her chest. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was the space where hope might one day take root. Sam was waiting outside, supplies loaded on the mare. He looked at her face and nodded once. "Mrs. Callahan talk your ear off." "She did." "Good." He started walking. "She's the best person in this town. Maybe the best person I know." Clara fell into step beside him. "She said I could come back any time." "You should." "I might." They walked in silence past the saloon, past the blacksmith, past the small church with its crooked steeple, and just as they reached the edge of town, a voice rang out behind them. "Clara Jane Whitmore." Clara froze. She knew that voice. She had heard it in her nightmares, in her memories, in every shadow that had chased her across 3 territories. She turned. Ezra Holloway stood in the middle of the street. He was taller than she remembered, broader, with a face that might have been handsome if cruelty hadn't carved itself into every line. 3 men flanked him, all armed, all watching. "Hello, sister," Ezra said, smiling. "Time to come home." Clara's blood turned to ice. Her feet rooted to the dirt like they had forgotten how to move. Every nightmare she had run from, every shadow she had fled, every bruise she had hidden, all of it stood 20 feet away, smiling at her with teeth that promised pain. Ezra. His name came out hoarse, barely a whisper. You remember me. Ezra spread his hands wide, that same snake oil charm he wore like a second skin. I was starting to think you'd forgotten your family. You ain't her family. Sam's voice cut through the air, low and hard as iron. Ezra's smile flickered. His eyes moved to Sam, measuring, calculating. And who might you be? The man who bought my brother's widow for $5. The man who's telling you to ride out of Silver Creek. Now. Or what? Sam didn't answer. He simply stepped forward, placing himself between Clara and Ezra. His hand rested easy at his side, close to the holster on his hip. Ezra laughed. It was a cold sound, empty of anything resembling joy. You think I rode 300 miles to turn around because some dirt farmer tells me to? I think you rode 300 miles to chase a woman who don't want you. That makes you either stupid or desperate. Either way, you ain't getting her. One of Ezra's men, a thick-necked brute with a scar splitting his eyebrow, stepped forward. Boss, you want me to handle this? Not yet, Cobb. Ezra's eyes never left Sam. I want to give this gentleman a chance to reconsider. See, Clara belongs to me. She's got debts. She's got obligations. And she's got a signature on a piece of paper that says she owes the Holloway estate everything she has. Clara found her voice. That paper is a lie. I never signed anything. Your husband signed it for you. Before he died. Before he left you with nothing but a name and a piece of land that belongs to me. Daniel would never. Daniel was weak. Ezra's charm dropped away like a mask falling to the floor. What was underneath was uglier, colder something that had learned to hurt and liked the taste. He was always weak. Couldn't hold his liquor, couldn't hold his mind, couldn't hold his wife. But he could hold a pen, and that's all I needed. Clara's hands trembled. You forged it. Prove it. Silence stretched between them. The townspeople had scattered doors, closing curtains, drawing shut. No one wanted to be caught between Ezra Holloway and whatever was about to happen. Sam spoke first. Reckon we'll let the law decide what's forged and what ain't. The law? Ezra laughed again. You mean Deputy Greer, the man who owes me $200 from a card game he lost last winter. That law. Sam's jaw tightened. Oh, you didn't know. Ezra took a step closer. I've been planning this for a while, Mr. Beckett. I know everything about this town. I know who owes what to whom. I know whose daughter ran off with a gambler, whose son drinks himself blind every Saturday, whose wife has been visiting the preacher a little too often. He smiled, and Clara felt her stomach twist. I know you lost a brother in the war. Ezra continued, voice soft now, almost gentle. I know you blame yourself for not being there when he died. I know you've spent the last 15 years trying to make up for it by saving every stray dog and broken bird that crosses your path. Sam didn't move, didn't blink. Clara's just another broken bird to you, Ezra said. Another chance to feel like a hero, but she ain't worth saving, Mr. Beckett. She's damaged goods. Ask anyone who knew her in Colorado. Shut your mouth. Clara stepped out from behind Sam, her whole body shaking, but her voice steady. You don't get to tell him who I am. Ezra's eyes lit up with something that looked like hunger. There she is. There's the Clara I remember. The one with fire in her belly. The one who fought back when I said shut your mouth. Or what? You gonna run again? Hide behind another man? That's all you know how to do, Clara. Run and hide and hope someone else solves your problems. Clara felt the words land like blows, because part of her believed them. Part of her had always believed them. Sam's hand touched her arm. Just a brush barely there, but enough to anchor her. You got 10 seconds to get on your horse and ride out, Sam said. After that I stopped being polite. Ezra studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, we'll go. For now. He turned, started walking toward his horse, then stopped. But Clara? He looked over his shoulder. I'll be back. And next time I won't bother asking. He mounted his horse. His men followed. And within minutes, the street was empty except for the dust they left behind. Clara's legs gave out. Sam caught her before she hit the ground. He didn't say anything, just held her steady while she remembered how to breathe. He's going to kill you, she whispered. He's going to burn down your ranch and kill you. And it's going to be my fault. He's gonna try. You should send me away. Put me on a stage to California. I can disappear. I can... Clara. Sam's voice was firm. Look at me. She looked up. His gray eyes were steady calm, like the surface of a lake before a storm. I spent 15 years running from what I couldn't save, he said. I ain't running no more, and neither are you. You don't understand what he's capable of. I understand exactly what he's capable of. I've seen men like him before. They think power comes from fear, from hurting folks who can't fight back. But it don't. Power comes from standing up when standing up costs you everything. Clara shook her head. Pretty words. They ain't words. They're a promise. He helped her stand. Her legs were weak, but they held. We need to go back to the ranch, Sam said. Get you somewhere safe while I figure out what to do next. And then what? Wait for him to come back with more men. Wait for him to... Then we fight. Together. Clara stared at him. Why? Why are you doing this for me? Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. Because you're worth fighting for, even if you don't believe it yet. They rode back to the ranch in silence. But something had shifted between them. Something Clara couldn't name and wasn't ready to examine. Not yet. But soon. 3 days passed without sign of Ezra. Clara knew better than to think he had given up. Men like him didn't give up. They waited. They watched. They struck when you thought you were safe. She kept busy, helped Sam with the horses' cooked meals that she barely tasted, read the same passages from Pilgrim's Progress over and over, without absorbing a single word. At night, she lay awake listening to every creak, every whisper of wind, every sound that might be hoofbeats on the road. On the fourth morning, Mrs. Callahan arrived at the ranch in a small wagon. "Heard about your trouble," she said, climbing down with more energy than her years should allow. Brought supplies and news. Sam helped her onto the porch. "What kind of news?" "The kind you ain't gonna like." Mrs. Callahan's face was grim. "Ezra Holloway's been buying up debts all over town. Anyone who owes money to anyone, he's paying it off, taking on the debt himself." "Why would he do that?" Clara asked. "Because now those folks owe him. The blacksmith, the livery owner, even old Pastor Williams, if you can believe it. Man's been gambling on the sly for years. Holloway knows about it." Sam's expression darkened. "He's building an army. He's building leverage. By next week, half this town will be in his pocket, and the other half will be too scared to stand against him." Clara felt sick. This was how Ezra worked. Not with guns and fists, though he had plenty of both, but with slow, patient manipulation. He had done the same thing in Colorado. Bought the sheriff, bought the judge, made sure there was no one left who could help her. "What do we do?" she asked. Mrs. Callahan looked at Sam. "You got any friends in this territory? Anyone who don't owe money to nobody?" "A few." "Then you better start calling them in, because Holloway's planning something big. I can feel it." Sam nodded slowly. "I'll ride out tomorrow, talk to some folks I know. And leave Clara here alone." Mrs. Callahan shook her head. "That's exactly what he wants." "I ain't leaving her alone. You're staying with her." Mrs. Callahan blinked. Then she laughed, a sharp sound that startled the birds from the porch railing. "Me, I'm 63 years old, Samuel Beckett. What am I going to do against armed men?" "Same thing you've done your whole life. Talk them to death." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mrs. Callahan smiled, a real smile, warm and fierce. "All right," she said, "but you better come back in one piece. I ain't explaining to this girl why I let you get yourself killed." Sam tipped his hat. "Yes, ma'am." He left at dawn the next morning. Clara watched him ride until he was just a speck on the horizon, then nothing at all. Mrs. Callahan put a hand on her shoulder. "He'll be back." "You don't know that." "I know him. Known him since he was a boy. He don't make promises he can't keep." Clara turned away from the window. "He barely knows me. Why would he risk his life for someone he met a week ago?" Mrs. Callahan was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down in the rocking chair on the porch, gesturing for Clara to join her. "Let me tell you a story," she said, "about a boy named Samuel Beckett." Clara sat. He was 17 when the war started. Signed up the day after Fort Sumter, him and his brother James. James was 15, too young really, but he lied about his age. Said he couldn't let Sam go alone. Mrs. Callahan's voice softened. They fought together for 2 years. Saw things no boy should see. Lost friends, lost hope, lost everything except each other. And then in the summer of '63, they got separated during a battle. Sam spent 3 days looking for his brother. 3 days without food, without sleep, crawling through mud and bodies. Did he find him? He found what was left of him. Mrs. Callahan's eyes were distant. James had been captured. The men who took him, they weren't soldiers. They were scavengers, deserters from both sides who preyed on the wounded. Clara's throat tightened. Sam was too late. James died in his arms. And Sam has spent every day since then trying to make up for those 3 days. Every person he helps, every soul he saves, it's all for James. That's why he bought me. That's why he bought your freedom. What happens next, that's up to you. Clara looked down at her hands. They were rough now, calloused from work, scarred from the life she had lived. But they were still hers. I don't want to be another ghost he's trying to save, she said quietly. I don't want to be a debt he's trying to repay. Mrs. Callahan reached over and took her hand. Then don't be. Be someone who saves herself, and maybe along the way saves him too. Before Clara could respond, a sound cut through the morning air. Hoofbeats, coming fast. Mrs. Callahan stood. Get inside. But, now, child. Clara ran for the house. Through the window she watched as a rider crested the hill. Not Ezra, not his men, but a young woman on a chestnut horse riding like her life depended on it. The rider pulled up hard in front of the porch, nearly throwing herself from the saddle. Mrs. Callahan. The girl was maybe 16. Brown hair, wild face, streaked with dust and tears. You have to come. It's Papa. Holloway's men, they took him. Mrs. Callahan's face went white. Took him where? I don't know. They came this morning, said he owed money. Papa tried to fight and they... The girl choked on a sob. They beat him, dragged him off. Mama sent me to find help, but there's no one, everyone's too scared. Clara stepped onto the porch. Who's your father? The girl looked at her with wild eyes. Thomas Greer, the deputy. The name hit Clara like cold water. The deputy. The one Ezra said owed him money from a card game. The one man in town who might have stood against him. Where's your mother now, Mrs. Callahan asked. Home, with my little brothers. She's scared they'll come back. Clara's mind raced. If Ezra had the deputy, he had removed the last obstacle. There would be no law, no authority, no one to stop him from doing whatever he wanted. Except her. I'm going with you, Clara said. Mrs. Callahan grabbed her arm. Clara, no! Sam said, Sam ain't here. Clara met her eyes. And I'm done hiding while other people get hurt because of me. This ain't your fight. It became my fight the moment Ezra rode into town. Clara pulled free. Where did they have your father? The girl wiped her eyes. I don't know, but there's an old mill outside town. Papa said Holloway's men been using it as a camp. Then that's where I'm going. Mrs. Callahan stepped in front of her. You'll get yourself killed. Maybe. Clara looked at her, and something in her gaze made the older woman step back. But at least I'll die standing up. She walked to the barn, found Sam's spare rifle, and loaded it with hands that didn't shake. Not anymore. The mill sat half a mile from the main road, surrounded by dead grass and rusted equipment. Clara tied her horse in the trees and approached on foot, staying low, moving slow. She could hear voices inside. Men laughing, the clink of bottles. And underneath it all, a sound that made her blood boil, the dull thud of fists hitting flesh. She crept to the side of the building and peered through a crack in the wooden slats. Deputy Greer hung from a beam, wrists bound with rope, face bloody and swollen. 3 men stood around him. Cobb, the scarred one she remembered from town, was doing most of the hitting. Tell us where Beckett's hiding her, Cobb said, driving another punch into the deputy's ribs. And this stops. Greer spat blood onto the floor. Go to hell. Another punch. The deputy's head snapped back. Clara's grip tightened on the rifle. Boss is getting impatient, Cobb said. He wants the woman. You know where she is. Make this easy on yourself. I don't know nothing. Greer's voice was weak but defiant. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell scum like you. Cobb smiled. It was worse than his frown. All right, have it your way. He pulled a knife from his belt. Clara didn't think. She acted. She kicked open the side door and stepped inside, rifle raised. Drop it. 3 heads turned. 3 hands reached for guns. Clara fired. The shot hit the lantern hanging from the ceiling. Oil sprayed everywhere. Fire erupted. In the chaos, Clara ran toward Greer. She slashed through his bonds with Sam's hunting knife, the one she had taken from the kitchen drawer, the one she had carried ever since, and pulled him toward the back door. Move! She shouted. Greer stumbled but found his footing. They burst out into the daylight as flames consumed the mill behind them. Cobb's voice roared above the fire. Get them! Get the woman! Clara didn't look back. She ran, pulling Greer along, ducking through the trees toward where she had left her horse. A gunshot cracked. Something whistled past her ear. She kept running. Another shot. Greer grunted and stumbled. Go, he gasped. Leave me. Not a chance. She dragged him the last 20 yards, shoved him onto the horse, and climbed up behind him. The animal bolted before she had full control, crashing through the underbrush toward the road. Behind them she could hear Cobb screaming orders, horses being mounted, the thunder of pursuit. But she didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't look back. Not until they reached the Beckett ranch. Not until she saw Mrs. Callahan running toward them with young Rosie Greer at her heels. Not until she finally allowed herself to breathe. She had done it. She had saved someone. For the first time in her life, she had been the rescuer instead of the rescued. And somewhere deep inside her, a voice whispered, maybe you're not damaged goods after all. They brought the deputy inside, laid him on Sam's bed, cleaned his wounds as best they could. His ribs were cracked, maybe broken. His face looked like raw meat, but he was alive. You shouldn't have come for me, he murmured through split lips. Probably not. Clara wrung out a bloody rag into the basin. But I did. Why? She paused. No one had ever asked her that before. No one had ever expected her to have a reason for doing something brave. Because I'm tired of being afraid, she said finally. And because someone did the same thing for me once. Figured it was time to pay it forward. Greer studied her face with his one good eye. Beckett's a lucky man. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. It ain't like that. Ain't it? She didn't answer. She didn't have an answer. Outside the sun was setting. Mrs. Callahan had taken Rosie home to her mother with instructions to stay inside and bar the doors. The ranch was quiet now, but Clara knew it wouldn't last. Ezra would come. He had to. She had humiliated his men, burned his base, rescued his leverage. A man like Ezra couldn't let that stand. She sat on the porch, rifle across her lap, watching the road turn gold and then purple in the fading light. Hoofbeats. She raised the rifle. A single rider emerged from the darkness. Clara's finger tightened on the trigger. Then she saw the hat, the broad shoulders, the gray mare. Sam. She lowered the rifle as he dismounted. His eyes swept over her, the dust on her clothes, the blood on her hands, the hard set of her jaw, and something flickered across his face. What happened? Ezra took Deputy Greer. I got him back. Sam stared at her. You got him back. His daughter came looking for help. No one else would go. So you went, alone? Yes. Sam took off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he started to laugh. It wasn't a mocking laugh or a bitter one. It was surprised, almost joyful, like he had just watched a miracle happen and couldn't quite believe his eyes. What's funny? Clara demanded. Nothing. He shook his head, still smiling. Just you told me you weren't worth saving. I told you a lot of things. You did. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell trail dust and sweat, and something else, something that made her heart beat faster. But you were wrong about all of them. Clara's throat tightened. Sam? I rode 40 miles today. Talked to everyone I could find. Got 6 men willing to stand against Holloway. He paused. But you didn't wait. You didn't hide. You went out there and saved a man who couldn't save himself. I just did what needed doing. That's exactly right. His voice was soft now. That's exactly what you did. He reached out and touched her face. Just a brush of his fingers against her cheek, so light she might have imagined it. I told you once that you were worth fighting for, he said. Now I know I was right. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. Don't make me into something I ain't. I ain't making you into anything. I'm just seeing what was there all along. She wanted to argue, wanted to push him away like she pushed everyone away, like she had been doing her whole life. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned into his hand, just for a moment, just enough to feel the warmth of his palm against her skin. And in that moment, something broke open inside her. Something that had been locked away so long she had forgotten it existed. Hope. Sam dropped his hand and stepped back. We should talk about what comes next. Clara wiped her eyes. Ezra won't let this go. No, he won't. He'll come with everything he's got. I expect so. And you've got 6 men willing to fight. 7 counting me. Sam looked at her. 8 if you're willing. Clara felt her spine straighten. I burned down his mill, stole his prisoner. I reckon I'm already in this fight whether I want to be or not. Then let's make sure we win. They stayed up late into the night planning. Deputy Greer, despite his injuries, joined them at the table, his knowledge of the town and its people proving invaluable. Mrs. Callahan returned near midnight, having rallied the women of Silver Creek, wives and mothers and daughters who were tired of being afraid. By dawn, they had a plan. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was something. And for Clara, that was enough. She stood on the porch as the first light crept over the mountains. Sam came to stand beside her. You should sleep, he said. Can't. Me neither. They watched the sunrise in silence, and when the sky turned pink and gold, Clara spoke. If I don't make it through this, don't talk like that. If I don't, she repeated firmly, I want you to know something. Sam waited. When you bought me at that auction, I thought you were just another man trying to own something broken. I thought you'd use me up and throw me away like everyone else. She paused, gathering her courage. But you didn't. You gave me space when I needed it. You protected me without trying to control me. You saw me not the widow, not the victim, Not the damaged goods, but me. Her voice cracked. No one's ever done that before, and whatever happens next, I need you to know that it mattered. That you mattered. Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Clara Jane Whitmore, if you think I'm letting you walk into a fight you might not walk out of without telling you something first, you're out of your mind. She looked at him. What do you want to tell me? He took her hand. His grip was warm, steady, certain. I want to tell you that when this is over, when Holloway is gone, and this town is safe, I want to spend every sunrise standing right here, with you. Clara's heart stopped. I ain't asking for anything, he continued. I ain't making demands. But I want you to know that you got a home here, for as long as you want it. She couldn't speak. The words stuck in her throat like stones. So instead, she did something she had never done before. She leaned up and kissed him. It was soft, brief, barely more than a brush of lips. But it said everything she couldn't find words for. When she pulled back, Sam was smiling. Well, he said, reckon that's one way to answer. Clara laughed a real laugh, surprising herself. Ask me again when this is over, she said. Maybe I'll give you a better one. Sam squeezed her hand. I'm holding you to that. The sun rose full above the mountains, flooding the valley with light. And somewhere on the road to Silver Creek, Ezra Holloway was already riding. They came at noon. Clara saw the dust cloud first rising like a dark stain against the blue sky. She counted the riders as they emerged from the heat shimmer. 10, 12, 15. Sam! Her voice was steady, but her heart pounded against her ribs. He was already beside her, rifle in hand. I see them. That's more than we planned for. Reckon Ezra's been busy. Behind them, the 6 men Sam had gathered stood in a loose line along the porch. Deputy Greer, despite his cracked ribs, held a shotgun with white-knuckled determination. Mrs. Callahan had positioned herself inside the house with the younger women armed and ready. The riders stopped 50 yards from the ranch. Ezra sat at the front, his horse stamping impatiently beneath him. Samuel Beckett. His voice carried clear and cold across the distance. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Sam stepped off the porch. Clara moved to follow, but he held up a hand. Stay here. Like hell. Clara. I said like hell. She pushed past him and walked until she stood at his side. If he wants me, he can say it to my face. Ezra's smile widened. There she is, my brother's widow, the woman who burned down my property and assaulted my men. He shook his head slowly. You've been busy, Clara. Not busy enough. You're still breathing. A murmur rippled through Ezra's men. One of them, Cobb, his face still blistered from the fire, spat into the dirt. She's got spirit, Ezra said. I always liked that about her. Daniel never knew what to do with a woman who fought back, but I do. Sam's voice cut through like a blade. You got 30 seconds to turn around and ride out of here. After that, I stop being civil. Civil, Ezra laughed. Is that what you call harboring another man's property, turning honest folk against their debts? She ain't property, and those debts you bought were paid in lies and threats. The law says otherwise. The law ain't here. Sam raised his rifle. I am. For a long moment, nobody moved. The tension stretched so tight, Clara could feel it humming in the air like a plucked wire. Then Ezra raised his hand. I didn't come here to fight, Mr. Beckett. I came to make you an offer. Not interested. Hear me out. Ezra's voice turned smooth, reasonable, the voice of a man used to getting what he wanted through words instead of weapons. Clara has something I need. A signature. One piece of paper and I'll ride away. You'll never see me again. Clara's stomach turned. What paper? The deed to your husband's claim. The mine in Colorado. Ezra's eyes gleamed. Sign it over to me and this ends. You can stay here with your dirt farmer. Live out your days in this dusty nothing of a town. I don't care. And if I don't? Ezra's smile vanished. Then I take everything, the ranch, the town, and you. Sam's finger tightened on the trigger. You ain't taking nothing. Wrong. Ezra snapped his fingers. Behind him, 2 riders dragged something forward. Clara's blood froze. Rosie Greer. The girl hung limp between them, her face pale, her hands bound. She wasn't unconscious. Her eyes were open wild with terror, but she couldn't speak around the gag in her mouth. No! Deputy Greer lurched forward, but Sam grabbed his arm. Easy, easy. That's my daughter. I know, but if you rush them, they'll kill her. Greer's face twisted with anguish. He looked at Clara, at Sam, at the men who stood helpless on the porch. Ezra's voice rang out. Here's how this works, Clara. You sign the deed. I let the girl go. Everyone lives. And if I refuse, then Cobb here puts a bullet in her skull, and then we burn this ranch to the ground with everyone inside. Clara's mind raced. The deed. The worthless piece of paper she had never even seen. Daniel had told her about the silver once late at night when he was drunk and dreaming. He said it would make them rich someday. He said it was their future. He never told her he had signed it away. You're lying. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. That deed was forged. You admitted it yourself. I admitted nothing. What I said was prove it. Ezra spread his hands. You can't. The paper looks legitimate. Any court in the territory will accept it once you sign. Why do you need my signature if you already have Daniel's? Something flickered in Ezra's eyes. Just a flash there and gone. But Clara caught it. Because the claim's in her name, Sam said slowly. Ain't it Daniel put the land in Clara's name? The document you forged, it ain't worth the paper it's written on without her signature. Ezra's jaw tightened. Clara felt something shift inside her. All this time she had thought she was running from a man who wanted to own her. But that wasn't it. Ezra didn't want her. He wanted what she had, the one thing Daniel had done right before he died. He protected me. The words came out like a revelation. Daniel knew you'd try something, so he put everything in my name. Your husband was a fool. My husband loved me. Clara lifted her chin. More than you ever understood. Enough. Ezra's patience shattered. Sign the paper or the girl dies. You have 10 seconds. Clara. Sam's voice was low, urgent. Don't. He'll kill her. He'll kill everyone no matter what you sign. Men like him don't keep promises. Clara looked at Rosie. The girl's eyes were streaming with tears, her body shaking with silent sobs. She was 16 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. Just like that other girl. The one Clara had failed to save years ago. The one whose face still haunted her dreams. I won't let another girl die because of me, Clara whispered. Clara. I'm sorry, Sam. She stepped forward. Her boots crunched against the dry earth. Every step felt like walking toward her own grave. Clara, don't do this. Sam's voice cracked. Please. She didn't turn around. Couldn't. If she looked at him now, she would lose her nerve. Ezra's smile returned slow and satisfied. Smart girl. I knew you'd see reason. He pulled a folded paper from his coat and held it out. Behind him, Cobb pressed a gun to Rosie's temple. Clara took the paper. Her hands didn't shake. She had learned long ago to hide her fear. Give me a pen. Ezra produced one from his pocket. Sign at the bottom, where it says Clara Jane Holloway. She looked at the document. It was exactly what she expected, a deed transfer covered in legal language with a space for her signature at the bottom. And next to that space, Daniel's forged signature. The handwriting wasn't even close. Anyone who knew Daniel would see it instantly, but that didn't matter. Once she signed, the forgery would be legitimized. Ezra would own everything. She put the pen to the paper. Clara, Sam shouted. She hesitated. And in that moment of hesitation, everything changed. A gunshot rang out. Not from Ezra's men. Not from Sam's. From behind, from the ridge overlooking the ranch. Cobb jerked backward, the gun flying from his hand as a red bloom spread across his shoulder. He screamed and fell, releasing Rosie. "Now!" Sam roared. Everything happened at once. Sam's men opened fire. Ezra's riders scattered horses, rearing in panic. Clara grabbed Rosie and ran, throwing herself behind the water trough as bullets whined overhead. "Stay down!" she shouted, shielding the girl with her body. Through the chaos, she saw Sam moving, not running, not hiding, but advancing. He fired once, twice, dropping 2 riders before they could draw. His face was set grim, the face of a man who had killed before and would kill again. Deputy Greer had made it to his daughter. He pulled Rosie into his arms, tears streaming down his battered face. I got you, baby." But Clara wasn't looking at them. She was looking at Ezra. He had dismounted, using his horse as cover. In his hand, a pistol gleamed silver in the harsh light. His eyes swept the battlefield, his men falling, his plan collapsing, and settled on Clara. Their gazes locked, and Clara understood. Even if Sam won this fight, even if every one of Ezra's men lay dead in the dust, it wouldn't matter. As long as Ezra lived, he would never stop. He would come back, again and again, until he got what he wanted, or they were all dead. She made her choice. Clara grabbed Cobb's fallen gun and ran straight toward Ezra Holloway. "Clara, no!" Sam's voice echoed behind her. She didn't stop. Ezra saw her coming. His pistol swung toward her. His finger tightened on the trigger. She fired first. The bullet caught him in the leg. He stumbled his shot, going wide, kicking up dirt 3 feet from Clara's boots. She kept running. Another shot. His arm this time. The pistol dropped from his fingers. She reached him as he fell, stood over him with the gun pointed at his chest. "You wanted me," she said, her voice raw with fury. "Here I am." Ezra looked up at her. Blood soaked his clothes. Pain twisted his features. But still, impossibly, he smiled. "You won't do it. You don't have the nerve. You don't know what I have. I know exactly what you are, Clara. A coward. A runner. A woman who lets other people die so she can survive." The words hit her like fists, because they were true. They had been true for so long, but not anymore. "You're right," she said softly. "That's who I was. But you made a mistake, Ezra." "What's that?" "You gave me something to fight for." She pulled the trigger. The shot echoed across the valley, silencing every other sound. Ezra's body jerked once, then went still. Clara stood there, the gun smoking in her hand, her whole body trembling. The rage that had carried her forward drained away, leaving nothing but a hollow ache. Footsteps behind her, Sam's voice gentle now. "Clara." She couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stare at the body of the man who had haunted her nightmares for so long. Sam's hand touched her shoulder. "Clara, it's over." She turned to look at him. His face was streaked with sweat and gunpowder, his shirt torn, his hat missing somewhere in the chaos. But he was alive. They were both alive. "Is it?" she whispered. "Yeah." He took the gun from her shaking hands. "It's over." Her knees buckled. Sam caught her, held her upright, held her together when everything inside her wanted to fall apart. "I killed him. You did what you had to do. I've never—" She choked on the words. "I've never killed anyone. I know." He was right. About what I did, years ago. There was a girl and I— Clara. Sam's voice cut through the spiral of guilt. "Whatever you did, whatever happened before, it don't matter. You hear me? It don't matter." "How can you say that?" "Because I was there too." His eyes held hers, steady and sure. "In the war, I did things I ain't proud of, things that still wake me up at night, but that ain't who I am, and what you did before that ain't who you are." Clara felt tears spill down her cheeks. She couldn't stop them, didn't try. "Who am I then?" Sam touched her face, wiping away the tears with his rough thumb. You're the woman who saved Deputy Greer when nobody else would. You're the woman who ran toward danger to protect a child. You're the woman who stood up when standing up could have gotten her killed. He pulled her closer. You're Clara Jane Whitmore. And you're worth every risk I ever took. She buried her face against his chest and let herself cry. For the girl she couldn't save. For the woman she had been. For the fear and the shame and the years of running. But mostly she cried because for the first time in her life, someone had seen her, all of her, even the ugly parts, and chosen to stay anyway. Around them, the battle was ending. Ezra's remaining men had thrown down their weapons, hands raised in surrender. Deputy Greer was already organizing the townsfolk, giving orders, taking control. And from the ridge above, a figure descended. A young woman with dark hair and a rifle slung across her back. She walked with purpose, her face familiar in a way that made Clara's heart stop. "Who is that?" she asked. Sam looked up. His expression shifted surprise, then recognition, then something deeper. "That," he said quietly, "is Annie." "Who's Annie?" "My sister." Clara stared at him. "You said you lost your brother. You never said anything about a sister." "Because I thought I lost her too." Sam's voice was rough with emotion. "She was supposed to be dead. They told me she was dead." The woman reached them. Up close, Clara could see the resemblance, same gray eyes, same stubborn set of the jaw. She was younger than Sam by several years, but she carried herself like someone who had lived through hard things. "Hello, brother." Annie's voice was cool, controlled. "Been a while." Sam stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. 15 years. Give or take. How they said the raiders... They lied. Annie's eyes flicked to Clara, assessing. "Who's this?" "Clara Whitmore. The woman from the auction." Annie nodded slowly. "I've been watching. You're braver than you look." Clara didn't know what to say. This day had already held more than she could process, and now Sam's dead sister was standing in front of her, very much alive. "We need to talk," Annie said to Sam. "But not here, not now." "Where have you been?" "Everywhere, nowhere." Something flickered in her eyes, pain old and deep. "I'll explain. But first, we need to deal with this mess." She gestured at the bodies, the wounded, the townspeople milling about in shock. Sam nodded slowly. He still hadn't let go of Clara's hand. "Will you stay?" he asked Annie. "After..." Annie was quiet for a long moment. Then, for the first time, she smiled. "Yeah, brother, I'll stay." Clara watched the reunion, feeling like an intruder on something private and profound. But when Sam turned back to her, his eyes held nothing but warmth. "Looks like my family just got bigger," he said. "Looks like mine did too." The words came out before Clara could stop them. Sam squeezed her hand. "Then I reckon we better start building a bigger table." The night after the battle, Clara couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ezra's face. The surprise in his eyes when the bullet hit. The way his body crumpled. The blood spreading dark across the dirt. She sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. The ranch was quiet now. The wounded had been taken to town. The dead had been buried in shallow graves beyond the fence line. Deputy Greer had ridden back to Silver Creek with his daughter, promising to return in the morning with whatever law the territory could muster. Footsteps on the boards behind her. Clara didn't turn. "Can't sleep either." Annie's voice was low, careful. "No." Annie sat down beside her, leaving a careful distance between them. She moved like someone used to keeping people at arm's length. "First kill." Clara flinched. "Does it show?" "It always shows." Annie pulled out a cigarette, struck a match. The flame lit her face for a moment, sharp features, old scars, eyes that had seen too much. "First man I killed I didn't eat for 3 days. Couldn't keep anything down. How old were you? 14. Clara turned to look at her. 14. The raiders who took me, they weren't kind. Annie's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. I learned quick that being weak meant being hurt, so I stopped being weak. Sam thinks you're dead. Sam thinks a lot of things. Annie exhaled smoke into the darkness. He's a good man, better than most, but he spent 15 years carrying guilt for something that wasn't his fault. What happened really? Annie was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice had changed softer, more vulnerable. The war scattered us. Sam went one way, James went another. I was supposed to stay with our aunt in Missouri, but the raiders came before I could get there. She paused. They took everything. The wagon, the horses, me. I'm sorry. Don't be. Being sorry doesn't change what happened. Annie flicked ash from her cigarette. I spent 6 years with them. Learned to ride to shoot to survive. When I finally escaped, I was 20 years old and more monster than woman. You're not a monster. No. Annie turned to look at her. I've killed 11 men, Clara. Some of them deserved it. Some of them were just in my way. You think that makes me a good person? Clara thought about the question. Really thought about it. I think it makes you a survivor, she said finally. Same as me. Something shifted in Annie's expression. The hardness cracked just a little. Sam told me about you, about what you did today. She shook her head slowly. Running toward Ezra when you could have run away. That's not what survivors do. Maybe I'm learning to be something else. Annie studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled a real smile, unexpected and warm. Maybe you are. They sat together in silence until the stars began to fade, and when the first light of dawn crept over the mountains, Annie stood and stretched. I'm going to check on the horses. Annie, Clara stopped her. Why did you come back? After all these years? Annie hesitated. Her jaw tightened. Because I heard Sam was in trouble. And because... She broke off, looked away. Because I was tired of running too. She walked toward the barn without looking back. Clara watched her go, feeling something settle in her chest. Understanding, recognition, the strange kinship of women who had been broken and rebuilt themselves from the pieces. She wasn't alone anymore. Sam found Clara in the kitchen an hour later, making coffee with hands that still trembled slightly. You should be resting, he said. So should you. He sat down at the table, his movements slow and careful. The battle had taken its toll, a gash on his arm. Bruises everywhere, exhaustion carved deep into his features. Annie tell you anything? Some. Clara poured him a cup. She's been through hell. I should have looked harder, should have kept searching. You thought she was dead. Everyone told you she was dead. I should have known. His voice cracked. She's my sister. I should have felt it. Clara sat down across from him. Sam, you can't save everyone. I can try. And when you can't, when the world breaks people faster than you can put them back together, what then? He looked at her, really looked past the surface, past the defenses. Then I keep trying anyway. Clara reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers laced through hers, warm and steady. You're a stubborn man, Samuel Beckett. So I've been told. It's one of the things I like about you. His eyes softened. Only one? We'll see about the others. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. For a moment, despite everything, the blood, the death, the exhaustion, Clara felt something like peace. Then hoofbeats thundered up the road. Sam was on his feet, instantly reaching for his rifle. Clara grabbed the pistol she had kept close since the battle. Stay here, Sam said. Not a chance. They moved to the porch together. Through the dust cloud, Clara could see riders, 4 of them moving fast. That's Greer, Sam said, lowering his rifle. "And those look like federal marshals." The riders pulled up in front of the ranch. Deputy Greer dismounted first, his face grim. "Sam, Clara." He nodded to each of them. "We got a problem." "What kind of problem?" Greer stepped aside. One of the marshals, a tall man with a silver badge and cold eyes, dismounted and approached the porch. "Mrs. Clara Whitmore." Clara's stomach dropped. "That's me." "Marshal Thomas Quinn, United States Marshal Service." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. "You're under arrest for the murder of Ezra Holloway." Sam stepped forward. "Now hold on." "Step back, Mr. Beckett." Quinn's hand moved to his holster. "This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't. She was defending herself, defending this whole town." "That may be, but Ezra Holloway was a citizen of Colorado Territory. His family has filed charges. I'm here to bring her back for trial." Clara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. After everything, the running, the fighting, the killing, it wasn't over. It would never be over. "Clara." Sam's voice was urgent. "Don't say anything. We'll get you a lawyer. We'll fight this." "With what?" Quinn's voice was flat. "The Holloway family owns half of Colorado. They've got lawyers, judges, politicians in their pocket. You think a dirt farmer and a bunch of townspeople are going to outspend them? She's not going anywhere. She's going to Colorado. Today." Quinn reached for Clara's arm. "Mrs. Whitmore, you need to come with me." "Don't touch her." Sam's rifle came up again. Quinn's men drew their weapons. Suddenly the ranch was a powder keg waiting for a spark. "Sam." Clara's voice was quiet. "Put the gun down. I'm not letting them take you. You can't stop them, not like this. Watch me." "And then what?" She stepped toward him, put her hand on the barrel of his rifle. "You kill a federal marshal. They'll hang you. They'll burn this ranch. Everyone who helped us, Greer, Mrs. Callahan, the townspeople, they'll all pay." Sam's jaw worked. His eyes glistened with something that looked like despair. "I can't lose you. Not now." "You're not losing me." Clara touched his face, forced him to look at her. "But I have to face this. I have to stop running." "Clara, you told me once that I was worth fighting for. Now I need to prove it." She swallowed hard. "Let me prove it, Sam. In a courtroom. The right way." The moment stretched between them, fragile and terrible. Then slowly, Sam lowered his rifle. Quinn stepped forward and took Clara's arm. His grip was firm but not cruel. "Smart choice, Mrs. Whitmore." "Wait." Annie's voice cut through the tension. She had emerged from the barn rifle in hand, but she wasn't pointing it at anyone. "I'm coming with her." Quinn frowned. "Who are you?" "Annie Beckett. I'm a witness to what happened here, and I've got information about the Holloway family that might be relevant to this case." "What kind of information?" Annie smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. The kind that gets people acquitted. The ride to Colorado took 4 days. Clara spent most of it in silence, her hands bound in front of her, her mind racing through every possibility. Annie rode beside the wagon, keeping pace with the marshals. She hadn't said much since they left Silver Creek, but her presence was a comfort. A reminder that Clara wasn't alone. Sam had wanted to come. Clara had begged him to stay. "The ranch needs you," she said. "The town needs you, and I need to know you're there when I come back." "If you come back?" "When?" She kissed him then in front of the marshals and Deputy Greer and everyone. Kissed him like it was the last time, even though she refused to believe it would be. "When I come back." Now bouncing along in the back of a wagon, she wondered if she had been foolish to believe anything at all. On the third night, Annie slipped away from the marshal's camp and found Clara in the small tent where they kept her. "You awake?" "Can't sleep." "Good." Annie crouched beside her. "I need to tell you something. About what I know." Clara sat up. "What?" "The Holloway family." Ezra, his father, his brothers, they've been running a mining scam for years. Buying up claims, forging documents, driving out legitimate owners. Sometimes violently. I know. That's what Ezra was doing with Daniel's claim. It's bigger than that. Annie's voice dropped lower. They've killed people, Clara. Miners who wouldn't sell. Widows who wouldn't sign. I have names, dates, locations. How do you know all this? Annie was quiet for a moment. Because I used to work for them. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. What? After I escaped the raiders, I drifted. Took jobs where I could find them. Didn't ask too many questions. Annie's jaw tightened. The Holloways hired me to track down a woman who had run from them. A woman who had something they wanted. The realization hit Clara like a fist. You were hunting me. I was supposed to. But I never found you. Annie's eyes met hers, steady and unblinking. Or rather, I found you 6 months ago, and I decided not to turn you in. Why? Because I saw you, Clara, saw how you were living, how hard you were fighting to survive, and I thought— She broke off, looked away. I thought there but for the grace of God. Clara didn't know what to say. The woman who had saved her at the ranch, Sam's sister, had been sent to destroy her. Does Sam know? No, and I'd rather he didn't. Annie's voice hardened. Not yet. Not until this is over. Annie, I'm going to testify, Clara. I'm going to tell the court everything I know about the Holloways. Their crimes, their corruption, their murders. And when I'm done, there won't be a jury in the territory that will convict you. They'll come after you. Let them try. Annie stood. I've been running from my past for 15 years. Time to stop running and start fighting. She slipped out of the tent before Clara could respond. Clara lay back down, her mind spinning. Everything she thought she knew had shifted. The woman who was supposed to be her enemy had become her ally. The family that had chased her across 3 territories was about to face justice. And somewhere in a small ranch in Wyoming, a man was waiting for her to come home. She closed her eyes and for the first time in days let herself hope. The trial began on a Monday morning in a packed courtroom in Denver. Clara sat at the defendant's table, dressed in borrowed clothes, her hands clasped tight in her lap. The Holloway family filled one side of the room. Ezra's father, a silver-haired man with a face like carved granite, sat in the front row, flanked by lawyers and sycophants. His eyes never left Clara's face. All rise. The bailiff's voice echoed through the chamber. The Honorable Judge William Thornton presiding. Clara stood. Her legs felt like water. The prosecutor was a thin man named Whitcomb, with spectacles and a voice like a razor. He painted Clara as a murderess, a schemer, a woman who had manipulated her way across the frontier and killed an innocent man in cold blood. Ezra Holloway, Whitcomb declared, was a respected businessman, a pillar of his community. And this woman, this widow of convenience, shot him down like a dog. The defense attorney, a young man named Harris, who had agreed to take the case for reasons Clara still didn't understand, did his best to counter. He spoke of self-defense, of the auction of Ezra's threats and violence. But Clara could see the jury's faces. 12 men, most of them with connections to the mining industry. Most of them beholden to families like the Holloways. This trial was rigged. She had known it from the start. On the 3rd day, Annie took the stand. State your name for the record, Harris said. Annie Beckett. And your relationship to the defendant? She's going to be my sister-in-law. Annie glanced at Clara, a ghost of a smile on her lips. If she ever gets around to saying yes. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. Miss Beckett, can you tell the court how you came to be involved in this case? Annie straightened in her chair. I was hired by the Holloway family to track down Clara Whitmore. They wanted her found and returned to Colorado. The murmur became a rumble. Judge Thornton banged his gavel. And did you complete this assignment? No. Annie looked directly at the elder Holloway. Because in the course of my work, I discovered the truth about what this family has been doing for the past 15 years. Objection. Whitcomb was on his feet. This is not relevant to the charges. Overruled. Judge Thornton leaned forward, his eyes sharp with interest. Continue, Miss Beckett. Annie took a breath. The Holloway family has murdered at least 7 people that I know of. Minors who wouldn't sell their claims. Widows who wouldn't sign over their husband's land. Anyone who got in their way. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. I have names, dates, witnesses. The courtroom erupted. Holloway Sr. surged to his feet, face purple with rage. His lawyers shouted objections. The jury stared in shock. And Clara. Clara sat very still, watching justice arrive, like a storm she had never dared to dream of. Order. Order. Judge Thornton's gavel cracked like thunder. Clear the courtroom. This trial is recessed until tomorrow morning. Marshals swarmed forward. Clara was pulled from her seat, ushered toward a side door. Through the chaos, she caught Annie's eye. Annie winked. And Clara, for the first time since this nightmare began, laughed. The verdict came 2 days later. Not guilty. Clara heard the words but couldn't process them. The crowd surged around her, cheering, shouting, reaching out to touch her like she was something holy. You're free, Harris said, gripping her shoulders. Clara, you're free. She looked past him, searching the crowd. Where was Annie? Where was... And then she saw him. Sam stood at the back of the courtroom, hat in hand, dressed in his best clothes, which weren't much, but he wore them like a king. His eyes were wet. His smile was the most beautiful thing Clara had ever seen. She ran to him. He caught her, lifted her off her feet, held her so tight she could barely breathe. I told you, she whispered against his neck. I told you I'd come back. You did. His voice broke. You kept your promise. She pulled back just enough to see his face. Sam. Yeah. Ask me again. He blinked. Ask you what? What you asked before, on the porch, about staying. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Clara Jane Whitmore. Will you stay with me? Build a life with me, be my family. She kissed him, long and deep and true. Yes, she said when they finally broke apart. Yes, to all of it. Around them the courtroom cheered, but Clara didn't hear any of it. She only heard Sam's heartbeat, strong and steady against her own. She was going home. The journey back to Silver Creek took 5 days. Clara rode beside Sam the whole way, their horses close enough that their knees sometimes touched. Annie followed behind, quiet but present, her rifle always within reach. On the 3rd night, they made camp near a creek. Sam built a fire while Clara unpacked what little food they had left. Annie disappeared into the darkness to scout the perimeter, old habits she said that would take time to break. You're quiet, Sam said, watching Clara across the flames. Just thinking. About what? Clara looked at her hands. They were different now than they had been a month ago. Stronger, steadier, marked with calluses and small scars that told the story of who she had become. About what comes next. Sam moved closer. What do you want to come next? I don't know. She laughed softly. For so long, all I wanted was to survive. To make it through one more day, one more mile, one more night without getting caught. I never let myself think about after. And now I'm scared. Sam's brow furrowed. Scared of what? Scared that I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. Scared that I don't know how to be happy. Scared that... She broke off, shook her head. Scared that what? Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. Scared that you'll see who I really am, and wish you'd never bought me off that auction block. Sam was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled between them. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called. Clara. His voice was low, certain. "I've seen who you really are. I saw you stand up to a man twice your size with nothing but courage. I saw you run into a burning building to save a stranger. I saw you face a courtroom full of people who wanted you dead and refused to break." He reached across the space between them and took her hand. "I don't want a woman who's perfect. I want a woman who's real, and you're the most real person I've ever known." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She had cried more in the past month than in the past 10 years combined. She was tired of crying, but these tears felt different, lighter somehow. "I'm going to disappoint you," she whispered. "I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to—" "I know." Sam squeezed her hand. "And I'm going to disappoint you too. That's what happens when two broken people try to build something together. But I'd rather be disappointed with you than content with anyone else." Clara laughed a real laugh, surprising herself. "That might be the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I've been practicing." She leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. The fire warmed her face. His heartbeat steadied her own. "Sam? Yeah. I'm glad you bought me." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Me too." Silver Creek welcomed them like heroes. When they rode into town, people lined the streets. Mrs. Callahan was there, tears streaming down her weathered face. Deputy Greer stood with his arm around Rosie, both of them waving. Even Pastor Williams, the man who had spent years hiding his gambling debts, came out to shake Sam's hand. "You did good," Greer said, pulling Clara into a careful hug. "Real good. Couldn't have done it without Annie." Greer glanced at Sam's sister, who stood apart from the crowd, uncomfortable with the attention. "She's something else. She's family." The word felt strange on Clara's tongue. Family. She hadn't had one of those in so long she had forgotten what it meant. Mrs. Callahan pushed through the crowd and grabbed Clara's hands. "Welcome home, child." Home. Another word that had been foreign for too long. "Thank you," Clara's voice caught. "For everything you did, while I was gone." "I didn't do nothing but pray and worry, Mrs. Callahan squeezed her fingers. "But I'm glad the praying worked." The crowd began to disperse, people returning to their shops and their chores. Life in Silver Creek moved on as it always did. But something had shifted. Clara could feel it in the air. The town that had watched her be sold like livestock now looked at her with something like respect, maybe even admiration. Sam touched her elbow. "You ready to go home?" Clara looked at him, at the man who had risked everything for a woman he barely knew, at the man who had waited for her, fought for her, believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. "Yeah," she said. "I'm ready." The ranch felt different when they returned. Smaller somehow, but warmer. More real. Annie had settled into the spare room, the one Clara had used when she first arrived. She kept to herself, mostly working with the horses, riding out at dawn and returning at dusk. But slowly, day by day, she began to thaw. "She's healing," Sam said one morning, watching his sister brush down a mare with careful practiced strokes. "In her own way, so am I." Clara leaned against the fence beside him. "It's strange, isn't it? How healing looks different for everyone." "What does it look like for you?" Clara thought about the question. A month ago she wouldn't have had an answer. Now she did. "It looks like waking up without fear. Like walking into a room and not checking the exits. Like trusting someone enough to fall asleep beside them." She looked at Sam, felt the warmth spread through her chest. "It looks like this." Sam pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her. "I could get used to this." "You better." They stood there holding each other until Annie's voice cut through the moment. "Are you two going to help with these horses, or just stand there making eyes at each other?" Clara laughed. Sam groaned. "Welcome to family life," Annie said dryly. "No privacy, no peace, and everyone always needs something. But she was smiling when she said it, and that Clara thought was its own kind of miracle. The wedding happened 3 weeks later. It wasn't much a small ceremony in Mrs. Callahan's parlor, with Deputy Greer officiating and Annie standing as witness. Clara wore a simple dress she had made herself, white cotton, with blue ribbons at the sleeves. Sam wore his best shirt, the one he saved for Sundays and special occasions. "Dearly beloved," Greer began, his voice rough with emotion, "we are gathered here today." "Skip the formalities," Annie interrupted. "Get to the good part." Greer cleared his throat. "Do you, Samuel Beckett, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Clara Jane Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Clara looked at Sam, at the gray eyes that had seen so much pain and still knew how to hope, at the hands that had freed her, protected her, held her when she fell apart. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you man and wife." Greer smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Sam cupped her face in his hands, gentle as always. "Mrs. Beckett." "Mr. Beckett." He kissed her, soft at first, then deeper. Mrs. Callahan cheered. Annie whistled. Somewhere outside, a horse whinnied its approval. And Clara Jane Beckett, formerly Whitmore, formerly Holloway, by a marriage that had never been a choice, felt the last chains of her old life fall away. She was free, truly free, and she was home. The letter arrived 2 months later. Clara found it in the mailbag when she went to town for supplies. Her name was written in elegant script on the envelope. No return address. She opened it with trembling hands. "Dear Mrs. Beckett, you don't know me, but I know you. My name is Mary Ellen Crawford. 15 years ago, in a town called Miller's Crossing, you were forced to make an impossible choice, a choice that haunted you ever since. I was the other girl." Clara's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the boardwalk, the letter shaking in her grip. "I survived, Mrs. Beckett. The men who took me held me for 3 years before I escaped. It was hell. I won't pretend otherwise. But I survived. I built a life. I have a husband now, 2 children, a small farm outside of St. Louis. For a long time I hated you. I thought you had betrayed me, chosen your sister over me, abandoned me to save yourself. I carried that hatred like a stone in my chest for years. Then I heard what you did in Colorado, how you stood up to the Holloway family, how you fought back when you could have run, how you became the woman I always wished you had been. And I realized something. You were a child too. 17 years old, terrified, trying to protect the only family you had left. You made a terrible choice, but you made it from a place of love and fear, not cruelty. I forgive you, Clara. Not because you deserve it. I don't know if either of us can judge that, but because I refuse to carry the weight of hatred any longer. You have spent 15 years punishing yourself for something that was never entirely your fault. It's time to stop. Live your life. Love your husband. Be happy. And know that somewhere in Missouri, another survivor is rooting for you. With grace, Mary Ellen Crawford. Clara read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, pressed it against her heart, and wept. Sam found her an hour later, still sitting on the boardwalk. "Clara!" He crouched beside her, alarm in his voice. "What happened? What's wrong?" She handed him the letter. He read it slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something that looked like awe. "She's alive," he said. "The girl you... she's alive." Clara's voice broke. "She survived. She has a family." Sam sat down beside her, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "And she forgave you. I don't deserve it." "Maybe not." Sam's voice was gentle. "But she gave it anyway. That's what grace is, Clara. Getting something you don't deserve, and being grateful anyway." Clara leaned into him. The weight she had carried for 15 years. The guilt, the shame, the endless self-condemnation didn't disappear. But it lifted, just enough to let her breathe. I need to write back. Then write back. What do I say? Sam kissed her temple. You say thank you, and then you live the life she told you to live. The autumn came golden and gentle. Clara planted a garden behind the house, vegetables mostly, but also flowers. Daisies and chrysanthemums and wildflowers that reminded her of the first gift Sam had ever given her. Annie learned to smile more. She started teaching Rosie Greer how to ride, how to shoot, how to defend herself. Every woman should know how to fight, she said. So no man ever gets to decide her future. Sam expanded the ranch. Bought more horses, hired help, started breeding the finest stock in the territory. But every evening, no matter how busy the day had been, he came home to Clara. How was your day? He would ask. Better now, she would answer. And it was true. Every day was better. Not perfect, there were still nightmares, still moments of fear, still ghosts that crept in when she least expected them. But better. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, Sam found Clara on the porch writing in a small leather journal. What's that? Letters. Why? She looked up at him. To Mary Ellen. To my sister wherever she ended up. To the woman I used to be. What do you tell them? Clara thought for a moment. I tell them about this place. About you. About Annie and Mrs. Callahan and Deputy Greer and Rosie. I tell them that I found a family when I thought I'd lost everything. She paused, her voice softening. I tell them that it's possible to start over, that the worst things we've done don't have to define us, that there's always another chance if we're brave enough to take it. Sam sat down beside her. That's a lot of letters. I've got a lot to say. She closed the journal and leaned against him. Turns out when you stop running, you have time to think. Thinking's overrated. Says the man who spent 15 years alone on a ranch thinking about his brother. Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, a real full laugh that Clara felt vibrate through his chest. Fair point. Bo. They sat together as the stars came out one by one. The air smelled of hay and horses and the coming winter. Inside the house, Annie was cooking something badly by the smell of it and singing a song their mother used to sing. Sam, yeah, thank you. He looked at her. For what? For seeing me. When everyone else saw damaged goods, a burden, a problem to be solved. You saw me. Sam took her hand, laced his fingers through hers. I saw a woman standing on a box in the middle of nowhere, covered in dust and blood, refusing to bow. I saw strength that most men don't have. I saw courage that most people never find. He squeezed her hand. I saw the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Clara felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time she didn't fight them. I love you, Samuel Beckett. I love you too, Clara Jane Beckett. She kissed him soft and slow, tasting the future on his lips. Spring came like a promise. Clara stood in the garden, her hands covered in soil, watching green shoots push up toward the sun. Behind her, the house was full of noise. Annie arguing with Sam about the new foal, Mrs. Callahan's laughter drifting through the open windows, the clatter of dishes as breakfast was prepared. A year ago, she had been standing on an auction block waiting to be sold. Now she was home. Footsteps approached. Sam came to stand beside her, a cup of coffee in each hand. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Clara took the coffee, breathed in the steam. Too much to think about. Good thoughts or bad? Good. She smiled. Mostly good. Sam looked out at the garden, at the mountains beyond, at the life they had built together. You know what I was thinking about this morning? What? That day at the auction, when you told me I'd regret choosing you. Clara laughed. I remember. You were wrong. I know. No, I mean... Sam turned to face her, his eyes serious. You were wrong about everything. About yourself. About what you deserved. About whether anyone could ever love you the way you needed to be loved. Clara set down her coffee. Sam, I don't regret a single moment. Not the fighting, not the fear, not the trial, or the marshals or any of it. Every step brought me here. To this morning. To you. He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet pouch worn with age. This was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died. Told me to give it to the woman who made me believe in something again. Clara opened the pouch. Inside was a ring, a simple gold band set with a single pearl, milky white and perfect. Sam, I already have a ring. I know. He took the ring from the pouch and slipped it onto her finger next to the plain band he had given her at their wedding. Now you have two. One for the marriage, one for the promise. What promise? That I will spend every day of my life showing you what you're worth. That I will never let you forget that you are loved and wanted and chosen. That no matter what storms come, we face them together. Clara looked at the ring, at the man who had given it to her, at the life that stretched out before them full of possibility. I believe you, she whispered. And for the first time in her life, she meant it. Sin. If Clara's story touched your heart, if you felt the weight of her chains and the lightness of her freedom, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We want to know how far Clara's journey has traveled. Because out here in the Wild West, love doesn't come easy. But when it comes, it's worth every mile, every scar, every tear along the way. This was the story of a woman sold for $5 and loved beyond measure. This was the story of a man who waited 15 years to find something worth saving. This was the story of a family built from broken pieces and held together by choice. And all of this proves one simple truth. The woman they called worthless became the most precious thing in the West.